So, as usual, little old me cannot wait until I, get my PC together or get my microphone back. Da da da. So, this is what we're doing today. If you hear background noises, you didn't. I'm sorry. I live in a little town that likes to vroom everywhere and do whatever the fuck they like to do. I don't know. Anyways, so this topic is Godhood. Hello. How do we get there? When do we get there? Why do we get there? If someone wants to get there. I spent like a couple days maybe writing all of this. I don't know how long this is going to be, but I'm definitely separating this into parts if any of you are interested in what the fuck I gotta say. And if I'm speaking a little bit quiet, I'm sorry, let me pump up the volume. So, when I imagine Godhood, I think of perfectly imperfect. I feel someone who ascends to Godhood when they die, seek out the knowledge of good and evil, or what we consider good and evil, because good and evil is way broader than we categorize it as, like Batman, for example. I think of him first simply because I just finished rewatching the Christian Bale trilogy, and there's a lot of good quotes and lessons to take from all three of the movies. Even if it is based on comics, a lot of comic book writers, all writers in general, take from real life. Now, as someone seeking out more knowledge about the earth, about the dark aspects of our existence, about what's beyond our existence, about what the natives have discovered, about how a lot of their discoveries were seen as delusional, barbaric, so on and so forth, it only makes sense for me to venture into this curiosity of Godhood. So I do have native ancestry, very close ancestry. I only have to go back maybe one or two great grandmas, but I don't claim it simply because I didn't grow up in that culture, although I wish I did because it is so close in the bloodline. And I mean claim it as in I'm not putting it in my social media bios. I'm not like, oh, I'm Black and Native. Like, I'm not doing all of that, but I am mentioning, it is a part of my bloodline. I feel my search for these things has a lot to do with it. So, and also I just come from a very spiritual family, mostly because of Christianity, but there is a lot of clairvoyance on my mother's side of the family. And I truly do wish we dive more into the spiritual side of things, and not base anything in religion, but that is what I'm here for, to bring it back. My mother has opened herself to some spiritual practices, but still puts herself in a religious box. So I just let her come to me all late with things I already know about, like with crystals or herbs or whatever the hell that she think is something new that is just simply not it. So with all that being said, we are going to get into Buddha. So Buddha is seen as a god from outsiders. He is not. He's an extraordinary being, according to history.com. Buddha means enlightened, and if I'm thinking correctly, being enlightened comes with more than just meditating. So the story of Buddha, simplified, is that he meditated all night beneath a peepal tree. After defeating the forces of the demon Mara Siddhartha, which is Buddha, reached enlightenment and became Buddha, an enlightened one. At the age of 35. So this lets me know that a form of godhood can be achieved with enough enlightenment. Now, this episode of my podcast and future podcasts dealing with anything spiritual related will be mixed with history and mostly my own theories/thoughts. So aside from the facts I state, don't take my words as law or anything unless you truly agree or feel what I'm saying. Now, when I actually go to Google and look up how to achieve godhood, like I actually searched up how to achieve godhood, or how are gods created, basically. On Quora, there are some mixed responses. A lot of people, when thinking of godhood, are most likely thinking of the Christian god, since Christianity is so popular. They think being a god is simply creating a world, creating beings, and so on. It's not. If there's anything I've learned in this journey, any god that's not the Christian god has a lot more going on separate from the stereotypical duty of a god. Gods like Aphrodite, Ares, Isis, Osiris, they have roles. A lot of them are given different names depending on the cultures. In Egyptian mythology, Hathor is the goddess of love, beauty, music, dancing, fertility, and pleasure. On the other side, we have Aphrodite, who is also the goddess of love and beauty. Now, you go to these ladies for anything pertaining to these subjects. They are not creators or destroyers. They are enlightened beings here to guide you if you seek them out. Emphasis on enlightened beings. Now, I am researching while putting a script down for this episode, so bear with me here. God is different than gods, no capital G, and deities. Gods and deities are in the same family. God is where you believing in one God, which is monotheistic. Anytime you say God, people think of one God in Christianity, for example. And saying the God of, etc., it makes sense. So to clarify, nobody is trying to reach the monotheistic Godhood. No, we are talking about being a deity, but Godhood all the same. So the main reason why I've started looking into this is because I sincerely do not want to come back here. If I'm going to be of service to the world, I'd rather do that on a different frequency. I don't want to physically be on this earth to be held back by the ways of the world. I think now would be a good time to get into the discussion of reincarnation. A lot say it happens when you have unfinished business, but what if you truly feel there is no unfinished business? What if your soul, your being, and all has nothing left to give? Why be forced to repeat something? Let's research. Reincarnation is a belief in Buddhism. You are reincarnated when you remain stagnant in ignorance, basically. Now, while I may think I don't have any ignorance left in me, there is always something I don't know. Reincarnation also happens due to karma. I don't know what karma I have, even if I strive not to rack up any bad karma. Anything I do could affect it, right? Some small thing I did could cause bad karma is how I'm seeing it. Now, I won't get too deep into this because this isn't my religion, but I am more than delighted to get DMs or anything, messages more about this from people who believe in Buddhism. I'm sure if you have no ill intentions, the karma sort of cancels itself, I would hope. The more I read about karma with reincarnation, they are saying the better karma you have, then the better next life you'll have. So are you saying I don't have a chance whether I'm reincarnated or not? So what I've started to go by is that whatever you believe in, heaven, hell, purgatory, you're just another state of being after death. That's pretty much like where your soul is going to go. I believe that when I die, me personally, I will go somewhere galaxy-like. Maybe I'll be in a whole different realm with my ancestors or a fantasy world of my own, like whatever I think in my head as far as where I want to go. What is my paradise? What is my heaven, basically? Or maybe I will reach this godhood that I have seeked out and be a form of guidance for someone. And disclaimer, interlude, while I did write a script for this podcast, I am saying things that are not on my script, but I definitely, with ADHD, have to keep myself grounded in what I'm discussing because I will quickly get off subject. So moving on, it's an intriguing and endless thing to think and talk about this. I could make many episodes on just this one thing because it opens up into multiple other things. You have all these cultures, gods, origins of these gods, ancient relics, and so on and so forth. So is my just seeking this out a path to godhood? Is me going through my life the way I am the path? Going to court for my traffic violation recently put me in an odd state. Deep thoughts on justice and the like. I sat there in that courtroom that had no clock, mind you. I don't know why I didn't have a clock, but just the balance scale right there, big on the wall behind the judge. And I'm a Libra, so that's like, we're known for the scale. We always try to hear both sides or look at things from multiple perspectives. Now, whether you believe in astrology or not, we can't deny that people of the same sign have characteristics they share always, constantly. You can go on to say that anyone, Libra or not, can have these characteristics. That's true. Astrology is deeper than just your sun sign, but there will always be a constant trait in signs that are undeniable. Being a Libra sun, Leo moon, and Scorpio rising is a calm, fiery mix, I think. I'm not too... I love astrology, but I don't dive too deep into it. One thing at a time. There's only so many things I can really cram into my head at one time. So I'm mentioning my signs to bring up the point of, could me being born the time and day I was born mean anything? Did the path already start there? And for reference, I was born October 14th, 1998. I was told I am a healer. I was told I was to have a mostly stress-free life, and it has been, apart from the usual heartbreak, disappointments, and, the everyday things of life that you just can't really control. All of this being told to me by what I consider a veteran in the spiritual, practice. She has been reading tarot cards for 16 years. And she goes by spiritual advisor personally, but of course, people put like tarot readings to, get people to come in, get their cards read, get their questions answered, basically. So she was a very skilled one. and she broke my cards down to me pretty well and told me things that I never even really thought about. Then she told me that the cards were telling her that I was reaching out to God. I felt he had abandoned me, basically. Now, with tarot reading, you can interpret things in different ways, differently than the one reading the cards for you, because they don't know you if they're actually doing their job. They don't know you from anything. They don't research you or anything. So basically, what they're saying to you can be on the nose but off the nose at the same time. And that's not a bad thing at all. That's just them trying to interpret, like, the cards. The cards are telling them things, and they're trying to interpret, confirm things, like, okay, everything is coming together. So when she said, I felt he had abandoned me or whatever, it made sense, but didn't make sense, but it made sense. So while I don't believe God being a he or any gender really, I knew what she meant by it. So I was reaching out for guidance. I was seeking help with how lost I was feeling. I was meant to see her, which she told me, but God, who wasn't who I was seeking out in a way. I was seeking a God. And the deity that reached back to me, I was surprised that it was him. And that is for a completely other episode, because his name strikes fear and closed-mindedness. Fear and closed-mindedness in lots of people. He is nothing like the Bible portrays him, is all I'll say about that. And I also have to work with him more anyways to really dedicate a whole episode to him. I only worked with him like maybe once or twice, and it's really hard for me to focus and get in that mode to really connect. So that's been really weighing heavy on my mind. But so now that we've come here, we have all this information, the readings, the zodiac, the deity that reached out to me, the way my body has been behaving. Who wouldn't think that Godhood is calling for them? Sounds a bit narcissistic, but I mean, it would be narcissistic if I wasn't even a part of a spiritual journey. That's just a bright freaking neon red flag right there. I've always put others before myself, most times it backfiring, of course, and for a long time I didn't care for myself much. I just wanted to please, I wanted to aid, I wanted to be good. But I think with enlightenment, you realize you cannot always be good. You cannot always offer yourself. And this is just a small part of the enlightenment, mind you. So at this point, I hope I'm still making sense, and I hope everything is coming together for you, but let's revise. So I brought up Buddha because he's not a god, but is seen as one and has reached enlightenment. This is very relevant. I brought up other gods, Aries, Osiris, to drive in the point that godhood doesn't always deal with creating or destroying. Aries and Osiris is probably not a good, Aries. Destroying, that's something there, I don't know. I brought up reincarnation because, with that, you can't get into godhood. Now, can you? But maybe you can't. You can possibly be reincarnated into a deity if your karma levels out. This is why we revise. We come to conclusions or more theories. If you don't already sit with yourself and have these discussions, I'm for sure here to do it for you. All right, so with getting all of that out the way, which is phenomenal because for some reason that all of that was a lot for me to put together and make cohesive. We already addressed that I have ADHD, so it's like sitting down and even doing this, I had to take that little hit of dopamine that I received and let's go. So we can get into what I think would make you the opposite of enlightened. With these deities, they don't go by silly rules of the world. Deities are not even thinking about homosexuality, transgenders, or anything in the LGBTQ plus category. These are enlightened beings. Remember that. They don't even subscribe to gender most times. I'm sure we've just placed that on some of them. You cannot seek out godhood or be enlightened with hate towards this group of people in your heart. I'm not saying this simply because I'm a part of the community. I'm saying this because it is true. And this is same goes for any racism or just anything, the ways of how this world functions because of history. Enlightened beings, I feel like, should not be a part of that whatsoever. So this I will stand by being fact. Anything else you can disagree with me on, have your different opinions, but this we gonna put it as fact. I'm not taking it back. I don't give a flying fucking this is very serious for me. It's just no way to be in the light holding such an unnecessary hate for anybody or strong dislike in your heart for anybody unless they truly have done you wrong. I feel like if they truly personally did you wrong, and I'm talking about one person, not a whole group of people, then there shouldn't be any strong dislike in your heart. And, in the Black community and in other religions, there is a lot of this. And I just point to the Black community simply because I am Black. I'm not going to talk about any other community right now, but this is all just my personal experiences. So there was a wave when everyone was learning untold facts about their history pertaining to slavery and spirituality, especially. There definitely are individuals who claim spirituality but have the nastiest spirits. And this is no different than any other belief, but spirituality, I feel like, is definitely the system you don't bring hate into. It is all about enlightenment. Why dim the light? I won't dive too deep into the subject, but it's just so contradictory to me. I despise debating about people's lives when they aren't causing anyone any harm. There is bad in all communities. I don't see why this can't be applied to LGBTQ plus as well. It's fucked up. My journey of seeking knowledge about Godhood makes even more sense to me because of the way I grew up and how my brain operated most of the time. Of course, I was taught to love people, watch out for bad people and all that, but I was also taught homosexuality wasn't of God. Being young, I always tried to reason with I'm sorry, she's downstairs. I always tried to reason with my mom. They're not bad people. I just wish they wouldn't use the rainbow to try and appease them, wink, wink, simply because in the Bible, the rainbow represents God's promise that he wouldn't flood the earth again. I was always so back and forth with it, but I was also a people pleaser. And being so open-minded, but also being put in a box at the same time since I was a kid was odd. It was very odd. I found myself thinking of very intricate questions that I knew my mother either wouldn't answer or would scold me for questioning. God, I've always questioned why things are... I just whispered that and moved on. Where am I at? Okay. So yeah, I've always questioned why things are the way they are. I've always had my own version of God in my head that knew I didn't mean harm, no matter what sin I had. But there was a long point where I thought I was damned. And that there was no point in not sinning. Seeing your family, especially your parents with tattoos, smoking, drinking, doing everything that is considered sinful just puts you as a child in a weird headspace. Being told that I was born to sin, why my flesh is not sinful, F you. I always felt angry being told that. And I was only told it like twice in my life by many of my mother's lectures. But how dare you? How dare that book tell us that? As soon as I'm here, I'm damned unless I pray, obey, etc. I never liked it and never will. Even just talking about it now, like currently as I am rereading my points and notes, boils my blood. It's just such a terrible thing to teach a child. We should, bless me, we should all have the freedom of finding our place, finding where religion or spiritual practice calls to us, as spirituality has called to me, and no other religion has called to me. Especially Christianity in this day and time. Not like much good has truly come from it from a history standpoint. And no offense to those who are, of course, but this is my opinion. These are my feelings. This is my experience. And since we're on the topic of history a bit, I feel like another thing that's a part of enlightenment is knowing the cons of whatever you follow. You can't be Christian and ignore the atrocities that your religion has caused. So now basically for the rest of it, I'm going to freestyle since I trust myself this time to kind of stay on track. So to add on to the topic of not ignoring the atrocities that whatever your belief has caused or been a part of, I feel like lots of religions have been the aggressor or culprit of lots of genocides and rapes and pillaging and all sorts of things just based off religion. Like, I don't even want to get into it. It's like I am a history buff, but I'm not at the same time. I have to be interested in it at the time to really read about it, but it's not hard to find the atrocities of mainstream religions. So, but damn. I was expecting this part of this first podcast back to be a bit longer with everything I wrote, but I don't want to have one part be too many things at once. It's a lot to really get into. It's a lot to research. It's a lot to just dive into in general, because there's so many known unknowns, unknown knowns, and stuff like that to really sit and honestly talk about it. But like I said, I'm here to be your inner thoughts. I'm here to itch the brain and get those questions rolling, even though I struggle with vocabulary, which is disturbing. Unless I'm very angry, I seem to be perfectly fine at not struggling with my vocabulary. But I want to be clear, even though, I know people listen to these podcasts when they are at the gym or when they're in the car. I definitely do. I listen to, I guess, YouTube versions of it because I just searching for a podcast. I need the visual before I can sit and actually listen to the person without looking at my phone. I recently got into debates. I've been watching Hunter Avalon. I don't really want to dive into anybody else. There's just too much stimulation. Sometimes they get it's just too much. So I'm just going to only follow one person. I don't agree with everything he says, but definitely my preferred debate YouTuber and the only one I've really seen. And he mentions like a lot of his other friends or whatnot that, well, not friends, but people he has been on debates videos and stuff with. And I'm like, I don't want to look into them because by the sounds of it, they don't sound like they're as articulate as him. So I'd just rather not do that. But moving back on to the task at hand and the topic at hand, I am trying to take this as serious as possible. I want to, when I get more time to do more research on things, I want to have more time to read. What I can do is recommend like books like Origins of the Gods is so far, I'm almost like more than halfway through that book. Is a very good book because it dives into, and they have a lot of like evidence and stuff like that. It dives into, back when Native Americans were doing spiritual stuff and the findings they found and the constellations meeting up and this and that. It's just, I have to have the time to write these things down. I have to have the time to rough draft these things out because I want to, although podcast is a lot of just talking and taking a subject talking, I need to have something organized to talk about these subjects because they are so intricate to me and so important to me. I don't want to just willy-nilly skip past something. I want to fully write down these thoughts, think of these thoughts, just put them together in a way that sounds so very, 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 very cohesive, especially for anyone with any learning disabilities. Like, I don't want to just like babble on and like, you're lost. I don't want you to be lost because I'm often lost, especially when I'm interested in shit like this. But Origins of the Gods has been a good book so far. They put a lot of studies and cite their sources, and you can just look into yourself. They have accessed things that a lot of us can't access. They have traveled to places with rich spiritual occurrences that we just can't travel to. And being able to read about that is beautiful. And that is a beauty of the world that a lot of people take for granted. Like, we have people that can do these things for us. We don't have to figure it out ourselves. They are sharing books about these things. They are sourcing sources, and we have come so very far with the help of gods. Let's go there. And we can get into that in another episode, but because of the touch of gods and God's reaching out to humans to see us advance, that is why we have advanced. And I'm not saying the people who have got us this far aren't talented beings, but the fact that the gods chose them to carry out the plan, I think is pretty fucking impressive. And hear me say gods. This is the shit right here. This is what it's about. It is about us making, shut up. This is about us making something of this life here. We weren't supposed to make suffering of this life. We were supposed to be great. And I don't know what time period it was, some war or something doing with, it's like I remember these things in history, but I don't remember the names of them. But basically, religion has set us back like maybe a couple of decades or so, something like that, as far as our technology. Religion, that war, whatever war it was that started because of religion, set us back so far in technology. We should be way ahead of ourselves. I think because they were calling things like demonic and things like that. You know what? I'm gonna actually look it up. Give me a second. All right, y'all. So Kira, look, I can fact check this, but then I'm a deep dive and never come back to finishing this first episode of this podcast. So one person said that I think the major event that delayed technological advancement was the advent of Christianity. So this is how he breaks it down. Rome and China were the two most advanced civilizations technologically in the world 2,000 years ago, and with the fall of Rome and the rise of Christianity, two events he thinks are linked, Europe was plunged into the Dark Ages. Why were they dark? Not because barbarians were less sophisticated than Romans. Nearly all the barbarian leaders had been pretty well assimilated into Roman culture anyway, but because Christianity squashed inquest, the church looked down upon people learning to read out of fear that they be drawn into hearsay. And the underlying tenet of Christianity was that everything that is because of God. No reason to look into it. Just shut up and pray and pay your tithes, is what this guy is saying. So he then continues on to say, I know that there are many revisionist historians who say that the Dark Ages weren't really that dark, etc., but just look at the history. I mean, the amount of written history. Any scholar of Rome can easily check the name of every single Roman magistrate from the fallen of Tarquin and the proud to the fall of Rome itself. And then there are centuries during which we don't even know if many of the kings were mythical or not. Arthur, ? Centuries in which not one major advance was made. Centuries. No philosophical works of any note were penned unless they were religious and therefore introspective in nature. Debate became theological debate only. The Renaissance really was the rediscovery of the classics, and we had to wait for 1,000 years while people of merit used their brains only in pointless theological quibbling instead of inquisitive investigation of the world around us. I honestly think he's saying this, I honestly think that if Rome hadn't fallen and the church had not stuck its holy nose in the affairs of humans, then we could have walked on the moon in 1600. That, him putting it in perspective like that is honestly insane. So, there's one theory. There was another one here that I was reading. Another person is saying the crystallization of the major ancient civilizations at a pre-scientific stage. The Egyptians are the classic case, having achieved enormous advances in government and creating the first state capable of vast projects like the pyramids, but ones which still ultimately only need a few hundred talented organizers and bureaucrats to marshal resources and a few thousand strong backs to do the actual work. They became so impressed by themselves that they thought they'd already gone as far as they could go. Their priorities, stability, preservation of tradition, looking back to an ideal past rather than forward to possible improvements, were antithetical to anything but slow incremental change over many generations. Written language that was consciously designed not to be accessible by the common folk, but only a class of scribes, was a strong contributing factor. I'm not going to read any further of his, but that's interesting. So back then, you were like set back. Like whole people just like, no. The answer is God did it. I don't know why y'all asking all these questions. It's basically what they said. They said God did it. Now let's move on. And then what else we gonna do? So we just gonna sit here and look stupid? See, this is what I'm talking about. But while I am still on subject of like Godhood and stuff like that, I'm kind of off subject. These noises, I'm so sorry. But information does tie into enlightenment. So I guess I am still on subject. But it just goes to show, like, this is just, we are blessed to be in this time period, yet very, very cursed because people act like they don't have fingers and ways to do their own research. And then if they do have the means to do their own research, they don't do it right because nobody told them how to do it right. And sometimes I get a little scatterbrained and I may look at something from years ago instead of maybe something more relevant depending on what I'm looking for. It's like, it's certain things like, yeah, I can get scatterbrained about. But what I will not do is sit and act like I'm still right when I'm presented with, hey, you were looking at either the wrong shit or something that's just completely just something on the subject, but not at the same time. And it's like, oh, this makes sense. I take new information every single day that blows me when I first read it because I'm like, okay, y'all are doing too much. But then when people in the comments break it down for me and why this person said this, I'm like, oh, okay, I see why they are connecting this to this historical moment. This makes sense. This is coming together. That is what we are blessed to have. But people don't want to sit and listen. People don't want to sit and read. People don't want to sit and figure it out. Like, I hate this tape, but let me read more about it to see what leg they're standing on. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that. And going back to my horoscope, maybe that's just a Libra thing. I love to read people's sides of things. Usually if it's the losing side, they're really not saying anything worth reading or listening to anyways. But I try my best. I try my best to be open-minded because that's what I'm trying to reach, enlightenment. But maybe, like I said, maybe it doesn't always have to be good. Maybe I don't always have to like these people. This is in my head. This is what I think about. Maybe, we're on this teetering scale of good and bad and neutral and chaotic, good, chaotic, evil. Like, it's too many intricate categories to living. Yeah. Too many intricate categories of living. And I have the history of psychology book that I'm reading or was reading. I have too many books to get to. Let's be real. And then I have evil archaeology that I was reading about so-called evil artifacts and just where do I teeter on? I know I'm not completely good because the way I handle certain things isn't exactly how, say, Buddha would handle it. But isn't that even more more reason to make me an enlightened being? Because you can't always deal with things the good way. Ain't that something? Well, I'm gonna take interlude because no interlude because you're just gonna hear my voice cut like, okay, I'm back, whatever. I do have company coming, so I will get back to this. Let's see what topic I jump to once my friend is in the room.
Elbow emoji with the fire.
So now that I'm recording again, we were just discussing that this podcast in the wrong hands, as far as saying you don't have to always deal with things the good way. Somebody who's not exactly mentally stable would probably take that and run with it for the rest of their lives. Please think of your decisions rationally before you conduct any business.
Period.
But back to what I was discussing.
Hibi, aba, sha.
Exactly. So, yeah, no, you can't always handle things the good way. I feel like if you're going to learn everything you're going to learn and try to be enlightened, you're going to have to delve and dive into every aspect of being, living, breathing, interacting with others. You have to see all sides of it. And I don't see suffering every day. I'd rather not. But with technology, there's easy ways to see suffering every day. There's easy ways to become hurt and affected by things that are nowhere near you across the world. And I feel like if you don't feel anything when you do come across these things, then you don't deserve to be an enlightened being.
Damn. Why?
Okay, so the reason why someone shouldn't be, at least I personally, in my strong opinion, think somebody enlightened or can't be enlightened if they don't feel empathy. I know that sentence did not finish itself, but you get my point. Because that would probably look terrible on paper, trying to put that on paper. But yeah, if you just lack empathy, being a Buddha or an enlightened being in general would just be a terrible job for you. Because what are you doing? What would be your role? You're not helping anyone. If you don't have any empathy, who are you guiding? Yourself? Your ego? Oh, wow, that's a lot going on right there. This is a sad look. You're stroking your ego at that point. You just want to be an enlightened being, to be a narcissist, to have someone worship you. I feel like that's gross. And I feel like there is even a balance to it if you do want to be worshipped in a way, but the worshiping you comes with guidance. It comes with help, per se. But if I worship you and see nothing in return, why are we here? What are you guiding me to do? Why did I call out to you if you weren't going to do anything? That's how I see it. Many of the deities that people reach out to help them with something, anything. It could be the simplest of things. But that was a lot of chaos just to get through that fucking thought.
I'm sorry.
Fuck. Wow. This is too much brain to be braining right now. We have reached the extent of my brain power. Maybe I shouldn't be an enlightened being, but maybe my chaotic brain power is why I shouldn't be an enlightened being.
Do you think enlightened people do more drugs?
Well, honestly, in my book, Origin of the Gods, which I did bring up earlier when you were not here, it does mention that back then, Native Americans and other tribes, apart from like the ones in America, did do their version of shrooms or psychedelics is what they called it in the book, psychedelics.
No, they was just tweaking.
Because it brought them closer to the ancestors. Yeah, basically. The ancestors or whatever, gods or deities and whatever they were reaching out to. I forgot what they called it in the book, but with the otherworldly beings, basically. So, honestly, I see this is why a lot of people, when they go on shrooms or acid, they're just like, I saw this, I experienced that, I found myself, and maybe, just maybe, that's what I have to do one day, is just truly have maybe a whole week of just...
Not a whole week, no.
Enlightenment!
Hours. And like...
So who said I was going to do it every single day the whole week, ma'am?
Girl, you said a whole week.
A whole week of... Because I work a full-time job. I need a week off to... Back then, they had jobs, but their job was over what? They got up early as hell to do whatever, tending to the farm or whatever livestock they had to do.
Girl,
and then...
You just have a day off in between this shit.
So a week off, look, forget whatever you're talking about. To sit and be and not be of the world, because there's too many things to distract you from sitting and meditating. I already have enough trouble clearing my head to meditate. Okay. I don't need, I have to be up to work tomorrow. I have to do this. I have to do that to constantly nag and bug at me. So yes, a week off. Doing this drug, that drug, no drug.
All drugs.
Resting. A whole calendar of things. Just to figure it the fuck out.
Now my question right now is, are you moking?
You came to my house. Got this all together. And you think I'm not partaking in
the marijuana smoke.
Welcome to Jam Rock. Hey. Look. On that note, they call it murder.
I come from Jam Rock.
I heard that is actually a really bad place. I heard that was a really bad place. I don't know who said it.
I said it's bad.
Okay, that is who said it. I was like,
But truth be told, my mom can tell you. Like, she said it was...
That's what you said. You said your mom went and that's what, yeah. Okay, off subject. We're trying to keep it on subject here. That is enough.
Jamaica,
I've had enough
Jamaica.
of myself. I've had enough of myself. Have a good
I haven't had enough of her.
Oh my God. Have a good morning, noon, or night. Please drive safely. Go to the gym safely. Please clean the equipment because that's disturbing me and my soul. If you are at work, just make sure you don't hurt anyone. If you're not paying attention, I don't know what you do for a job. If you are just laying in bed, looking up at the ceiling, wondering why you're still here, this is why you're still here. To listen to me so we can